the lady here literally is quite emotional having watched that tape. And that is the magic of Downton, isn't it, Gareth, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it does have. I think it's the effect of seeing 6 years' worth of all the wonderful and terrible things that can happen to a family condensed into 2 minutes. It is quite overwhelming, isn't it? And it reminds me, we did a screening of the first ever Christmas episode that we did in the second season, and there was about 800 people in this theatre in London, and they were all enjoying the episode. And when it came to that final scene out in the snow where Matthew got down, when people started to realise the direction that scene was going in, there was this and it was a female noise, I have to say. There was a kind of, so like you could just hear it. Finally, this moment had happened.
And I think it's almost universal, the sort of reactions that you have to Downton. And I was reading up on a reaction that you had after season 1, episode 2 had gone out. The then director of ITV Drama called you to let you know what the figures have been, and they've gone up to 11.8 million. And she said you just went silent and you actually couldn't believe it. Was it at that point where you thought, my goodness, what have I created?
Yeah, well, it was...
A few expletives, I'm sure.
No, I was completely shocked, because I mean, we don't expect to see shows going up 20% between the first episode and the second one, and that, I think, it was at that point when I thought something really remarkable is happening.
Yeah.
And I was on the plane going to Nice because it was MIPCOM, and Julian Fellows was on the same flight, and but he was going at that because he was setting up Titanic, and so we weren't going there together. He was going, so we weren't sitting together. And I just had that news from Laura Mackie, and I just couldn't believe it. So I got off the plane and I ended up loitering on the jetway, waiting for Julian to come to tell him this extraordinary news. And I said, I don't know how to say it, the ratings are phenomenal, this is extraordinary, this show is going to be a smash hit. And he just looked at me, didn't really understand what I was saying, he just pointed at his hand. He said, "From here comes genius."
Absolutely brilliant.
Same moment, because I was also flying down to Nice. We've never had this conversation, and I was in the queue.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I was in the queue to get on the plane, and ITV's scheduler in chief, David Berg, sent me a text that simply said, "Have a nice flight." I thought, that's very odd, because I'm always flying off here and there, and he couldn't give a damn whether I have a nice flight or not. He doesn't normally wish me well when I'm flying somewhere. And then the penny dropped, and I thought, oh yeah, it's 20 to 10 on Monday morning. We've had the ratings in. And I remember opening them up, and indeed they'd gone up 2 million from the first episode to the second. I've never seen that happen. Wow. And by the way, only one thing makes that happen, which is word of mouth, which is people saying, you've got to watch this. You know, when there's been a lot of marketing for Downton, and there has always been a lot of marketing, and brilliant marketing, but marketing won't do that. It's only word of mouth. People telling their friends, you've got to watch it. It won't do that.
I was at the fish counter at Lidl when I was amazed.
It was Waitrose by season 2.
Oh, Waitrose by season 2. Now it's in the Fat Harrod's food hall. How do you do it?
Peter, why did you decide to greenlight it back in 2008? I mean, it was £1 million an episode, which was a huge amount of money back then. What was it about that script where you thought, yeah, this is it?
It was a brilliant script, is a simple and straight answer, and should always be the answer. You can post-rationalise things in lots of ways, and people have suggested rationalizations to me that never crossed our minds. So, for instance, we were just going into a terrible recession. Wouldn't it be a marvellous time to commission a very escapist drama that took you back to a seemingly more settled and happier time? Oh, that's bollocks. We didn't think like that at all. In fact, because we were in a pretty bad state financially, it was a bit of a stretch. If you read a great script, I hate to say it, it's not that difficult. You'd be an idiot not to. And when I say a great script, and if you go back to the first episode of it, one of the tests that I would put to any drama is, at the end of episode 1, do you want to come back and spend more time with one or two of these characters? Yeah. And you normally will mean one or two of these characters. So the detective, or the detective and the detective's sidekick. You might come out of the first episode thinking, I like those two. You came out of the first episode of Downton thinking there's maybe 12 or 15 characters, and I want to come back and see them all. And that's one of the, extraordinary achievement of Julian. And another thing I said to say about Downton, because people, sometimes say, oh, it's a posh series about a posh family. Of course, it is about a posh family. But he gave, and throughout has given, absolute equal attention to the experiences of the people below stairs as downstairs and as above stairs. Their hopes, frustrations, dreams, reverses are in every way of equal value, and that's one of the reasons it appealed to people. And also,
Mikey, you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, and it's that element of having lots of characters that you can associate with, that you love watching, that you actually almost fall in love with. That's part of the reason why it did so well in the States and globally, isn't it?
I think it did. I think it's an interesting piece of television in that Julian is really a student of American television as well. So you have the best of British elements, but you also have a show with 17, 18, 19 main characters. You have Julian enters scenes very late, gets out of scenes very early, leaving you wanting more. And it really has the ability to, as what Peter said, you want to watch more, you want to learn more about people, and it's entirely optimistic. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
And Phyllis, did it leave you wanting more when you first read the script?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody said it already, but when I first read, and one does get scripts to read, and the really good ones are, I can tell you, few and far between. You get okay ones, or you think, that's okay, but this, I thought, this is fantastic, and I read it from beginning to end, that first episode, and he paints his characters with such wonderful, clear brush strokes, Julian, that you know who the characters are within, half a page. You think, oh, that's that bloke. They can still throw you a surprise, but you think, that's that person, and he does that brilliantly, and I was just enthralled by the whole script and thought, I want some of this action, please.
Wow, talking about getting some of the action, you do, don't you? You do end up getting some of that. It's been good times,
6 years, but we got there.
Better late than
fishes
never.
have mated quicker.
Better late than never. It has been quite nice being a part of that whole slowly growing love story.
That's been lovely. Yeah, and Julian's really sort of teased it out. You had to in a way, because those, in reality, butlers and housekeepers didn't get married. So, but I think he's played a very fine line in sort of drawing this late blossoming romance out, and from the reactions I hear from people, they love it, and they're sort of all rooting for Carson and Mrs. Hughes.
So it's almost they become a sex symbol of sorts in 250 territories worldwide. How does that feel?
Sex.
Of sorts? What's it of sorts?
As an Edinburgh audience will know, sex is something that you carry the coal up in. Sex, coal.
It wasn't a plan from the beginning to do this. It wouldn't have happened if we hadn't enjoyed the chemistry of Phyllis and Jim. There wasn't a particular plan that they would get married, and we kept talking about it probably through, certainly not in season one, but maybe after we'd watched season one, we thought, well, maybe we should. We got more into the chemistry, and I don't think we made a final decision until about 3 years in. We thought, if we don't do this, the audience are going to be absolutely devastated.
But it seemed to happen quite early that people did say to us, oh, when they're going to get together, which is something I've never really thought of as being a potential storyline, really. But it was quite early on, wasn't it?
We felt it, didn't we? Well, I did.
At least one of you did, that's good. Michael, NBC Universal has been instrumental in making this the global hit that it is. How did you guys do it?
I think it's easy when you start with a great show. So,
but there have been lots of British shows which we would deem as being great, but haven't managed to get to the dizzy heights of Downton.
I think it goes to something that Peter said, which is that's that thing where you want to know more about everybody. I just started my job at NBC Universal while Gareth was producing this, and I remember he gave me 4 episodes to watch. On a typical weekend, you intend to watch 1 or 2. You think, I'm going to watch a bunch of things, I'll read a few scripts. It was Friday night, I'd been traveling around the world. I literally put it on at about 9 o'clock at night. I watched all 4 hours in one sitting. I walked into the office on Monday and I said, this is an amazing piece of television. I've never seen anything that made me want to devour it so quickly. I think the nice thing is that everybody feels that way about it. Part of it is a lot of British drama is heavy. It's dark. There's been a murder. A child has been killed. There's some general unhappiness that is being sorted out. There's some dark secrets.
But we are generally happy people, though.
It's a funny disparity between television and reality. I think what is touched on, a nerve for everybody. You can watch Downton if you're 12 years old.
Yeah.
You can watch Downton if you're 75 years old. And I think that's part of the reason it's been gobbled up by free-to-air television stations and cable platforms around the world.
And it's interesting that you talk about sort of almost carb loading on the episodes, because Peter, this is spoken about in terms of things like Orange is the New Black, Breaking Bad, The Wire, in terms of people wanting to, you start at one episode 1, and then you end up spending weekends upon weekends upon weekends trying to finish it. Do you think it's possible for a British drama to do that again?
No, I don't think it's impossible at all. But I don't think, for most viewers, that Downton is part of the binge viewing phenomenon in a way. I mean, I'm sure it is for some, but I don't know. There's doubtless some statistics we could dig out, but I would say, it's been very much a thing about Sunday night, 9 o'clock viewing. This is for the UK audience. I've no idea in all the other territories that it's been shown in, but I think it's been something that, Michael's right. It's a sort of cross-generational thing that you can all sit down to watch at that time of, it's a very naturally a Sunday night show. I can't imagine us ever having scheduled it on any other night. And it's, again, a thing about it, because you're right, a lot of UK dramas, dark, there's a lot of crime drama, detective drama with murders and so on. But I think Downton, you misunderstand Downton if you think it's just a warm bath. It's not a warm bath at all. Awful things happen to these characters. There's an enormous amount of drama, an enormous amount of life-changing, life-threatening events. I mean, goodness knows, leaving aside Carson and Mrs. Hughes, Bates and Anna have both been accused of murder, for God's sake. So there's dark things in Downton. It's a very, very, very round kind of picture of what drama is. It's not just an easy drama.
I think it's a romance, isn't it? I think people have sort of keyed into the romantic elements of there, and everyone's sort of rooting for different couples to get together or to be happy. And Julian tells a story about being stalked by a woman in New York, and then eventually she plucked up the courage to come up to him and said, "Oh, please let Lady Edith be happy." No, not at all.
I agree with that, and there's another thing that I would say about Downton is that if you, as we get towards the end, if you were to add up the sum of happiness for all the characters, if you like, if you had a ledger, you would find it was no different for the downstairs character than the upstairs character.
Yeah.
All their wealth and all their money hasn't made them happier, because they deal with the same frustrations and disappointments, and Edith is a perfect example of that. Yeah. And they're looking for the same thing. They're looking for love and happiness.
Looking for love. Aren't we all just looking for love? Right.
I think also the way people tend to watch it, rather than maybe they do binge on it, but is they watch again and again and again from the beginning. So many people have said, I've got the box set, I'm just going to next weekend I'm going to do the whole of season whatever it is, and they just buy the box sets and love watching it all over again, reliving it.
It does make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, I think, sometimes watching Downton. Now, you guys have chosen some of your favourite scenes, which we're going to show. Up first, let's have a look at our first clip. Ooh, Phyllis, if looks could kill.
Quite that clip. There was one when I never, but anyway, yes, but it was that.
You chose one with that me in it, love. Thank you.
How was I to know? Was there no, I that whole horrible rape sequence with Anna and Mr. Green was just. It was lovely to get some, meaty things to do, but it was rather a tragic storyline. But no, I just enjoyed, giving it to him both barrels. There was one point when I said, basically, don't you darken our towels again, you know, sling your out, mate. But yeah, I enjoyed that whole.
Yeah, but isn't it quite? I mean, I think for me, watching Downton, one of the interesting things is how it managed to cover such contentious issues, such as rape and premarital sex and babies out of wedlock, for example, and do it so well. Was that important to you, Gareth, when you first created it, that you wanted to be able to cover things like this?
Well, I think I could expand on some of the things that Peter and Michael have said, that, you know, we were going to, you know, what's perhaps, you know, the quintessential British, you know, the sort of English country house, the thing that we've seen, all of these endless adaptations of novels and all of that. This was about, and this was part of the reason why the show was on ITV, it was about, you know, being more of a shared audience experience, an original show that wasn't an adaptation. And that by being an original show, you could tell any story that you wanted to tell. That it would have this soapy feeling of, you know, multiple narratives all intertwined. So it would have this very contemporary pace to it. And while I totally agree that it's overwhelmingly, you know, it's ultimately an optimistic outlook on life because everyone's just trying to get by and get on. But dark things happen.
Like murder mysteries, which is going on at the moment.
Yes.
You know, which is quite interesting. Yeah.
And we're blessed that we have a writer of the show who, on a sixpence, can turn between laugh out loud comedy and dark moments like that. And equally, we have actors, not just these two brilliant actors, but the entire cast who can play a scene, you know, get brilliant comedy. Yeah. And just like with the writer, they can just turn it into a moment of darkness. Because I think, in British television particularly, but I think the same is probably true of American television, but particularly here, we do comedies and we do dramas. And dramas don't have any laughs in them. And comedies, although this is changing, they traditionally did not have a lot of narrative. And I think that is not true of real life, because in our darkest moments we still laugh. Every day of my life is a mixture of drama and comedy. And I think that's real. And so people, as Peter was saying, people sometimes said, oh, you know, they were so shocked by the death storyline and going, this is just not Downton. And I would say, but 3 episodes before, Matthew Crawley held his newborn child, and 5 minutes later he was dead on the side of the road. And so, but, you know, the show has always been this sort of shared thing between the dark and the light, but with this ultimately a journey of optimism.
Do you want to see more of that, Peter, on ITV?
Do I want to see more in general in ITV
in
drama?
terms of, you know, the light and the dark.
I think that I think any broadcast would say the same about drama output, which is that there's a lot of crime drama on television, always will be. Audiences love it. Generally speaking, if you're at the commissioning end of things, more crime-based script come your way than others. Not all of it's great, but some of it, like the Broadchurches of this world, is absolutely fantastic. Harder to find than new crime drama is non-crime drama. Whatever the magic is of a drama that isn't, if you like, driven by murders and detectives. I'm talking the mainstream here, for mainstream channels. The drama that can appeal to a broad audience without the fundamental motives of detection and crime, they're hard to come by, which is why when you do find one like Downton, you just say, well, hallelujah, this is fantastic. So in that sense, of course, we would always want more that occupies that different space, which when you get it right is very, very precious indeed. But you know, we're also the decision that this is the last series of Downton Abbey it's Gareth's and it's Julian's decision, but it's a decision we absolutely respect. Downton's been an incredible ride, but if this is the right moment to end it, then we must end it, and we'll move on.
And Michael, do you find it quite difficult to come across those light and dark scripts as well?
I think, anything of this quality, it comes along once every 3, 4, 5 years. If you look across the vast spectrum of great shows on the air, there's 4 or 5 great shows on the air around the world at one time. Mixing comedy and drama is one of the hardest things. I mean, certainly Downton plays more to drama than comedy, but Julian has such a quick wit, and with people like Maggie Smith, who can deliver a one-liner better than any sitcom actress around the world, it's extraordinary. But I think we're all searching for that next, big show, whatever that is. The problem is you can't chase it. But you do know it when you see it. You do read something and go, this has the potential. Then everybody has to do their job. So fortunately, Gareth and Julian are brilliant at what they do. We got an amazing cast. It was really well directed. Peter and his team could not have been more brilliant about scheduling it, marketing it, connecting to it. I know we've been talking about around the world. The truth of the matter is the phenomenon started in the UK. If it hadn't launched on ITV like it did, if it hadn't made so much noise and had such a great platform, it wouldn't have traveled.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big, massive thank you to Peter for that, I'd say.
I think we've got lots of drama coming up, and so have the other broadcasters, but there would be no greater curse you could place on a drama, on an upcoming drama, to say we think this is the new Downton Abbey. In fact, I plan to say about all the forthcoming BBC dramas. quite deliberately.
I used to see that thing in the papers the other day saying the BBC is this the BBC's new Downton, this Black Diamond thing, and at the bottom it's the usual way it said the BBC declined to comment.
Okay, now we're going to take another VT. I hope it's one of your favourites, because I've been told that these are your favourites. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. Let's take a look.
There's about 5,000 people with buckets and spades just out of the shop.
Just out there. And because you're in the business, you'll understand that as we were walking out, of course, the crew were backing away from us with the water lapping up around their waists. So quite startling me on some occasions as the tide went in and out.
But you used to put people, when they would ask, after they'd seen that episode, and fans would say, "Oh, that was so lovely," and you'd say yes, but you don't know how the start of the next season
because
goes.
that would have ended season 4, and I said season 5 starts with 2 bodies washed up on the shore. Rather put a dampener on people's spirits.
Jim, has it been nice to sort of work the sort of love story elements in the final seasons of Downton, you guys?
Has it
been nice working sort of on the...
Well, it's lovely because a lot of what we do, we're being functionaries. We are acting our jobs, and so what is lovely is the way that we're given these little chinks into people's private lives and emotional lives, but a lot of the time we're on duty and that's what we're acting. And then you see glimpses, and I think they're more precious for being sort of rare in a way. And because these people had a limited sort of emotional vocabulary, it was done very sparingly, and to work, I mean, it was a treat, because the big scenes are kind of rambunctious and quite hard work, really, and then you get a little scene sitting quietly with a glass of sherry, catching up at the end of the day, with a wonderful actress, and it was Mrs. Patmore, and it was, and they were a delight, and we relished, as actors, we relished doing them, and and for it being quietly understated. Mrs. Hughes had a health scare, and Mr. Carson couldn't let on that he was concerned about it, and then through a chink in the door you see him singing, dashing away with a smoothing iron, because he's pleased. It was.
There was things like that sequence that made us start to think, oh, there is something that landed so well, but you suddenly realised he was really worried about her health, that you thought this is a relationship we're going to take further.
But we don't wear our hearts on our sleeves in the modern way. We don't declare things openly. We're not,
It's obvious.
But that must be quite fascinating. Almost like a learning experience for an American audience or a global audience, Michael, to sort of know that, it's like the British Reserve. I may love you, but I won't necessarily say it. I'll just show it in different ways. It's almost like an educational video on love for a global audience.
If it is, I think we're doing our homework badly. I do feel like there is something that is exotic to an American audience. I mean, it's funny, the royal family here has a mixed impression with the general public. You go to America, anything royal is instantly embraced. We can't get enough of it. The world of class, we don't necessarily have it in such an overt way in the US, so it doesn't ring true. I don't even think, in the US, we don't really talk so much about upstairs or downstairs. It's just Downton, and they're all characters to us.
Yeah.
But it certainly is a much more reserved world of the modern age, and I think it's exotic for people now to look at it.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because what I thought was wonderful about Downton is that we never felt any pressure, Gareth, you can probably answer this, to sort of make it understandable to an American ear. It was unremittingly English, and he used phrases and terminology and customs that would have meant nothing to Americans. Was there a pressure from above to make it American?
Well, we kicked away things like that very quickly. Die-hard fans will remember the whole of the first episode was about something called primogeniture. And for any of you who kind of knew what that is, then there was the word entail. And I can tell you the only person who didn't have to look it up in a dictionary was Julian Fellows. Everyone else involved had to look it up. And we went through, Peter and I and Laura and Sally had all these conversations about, is this just too complicated a piece of legal jargon? We cut it back, we kept it. And in the end, we just went with it, because all you have to understand is there's no male heir, and they have a problem.
Yeah.
Now, when we took the show to the US, we had all the same notes from PBS just going, but Gareth, nobody in America knows what an entail is, because they always assume that we live this stuff, that we live in these places. And I said, nobody make it involved in the show, and nobody in the British audience knows what an entail is. It doesn't matter. Yeah. They don't have a son, they've got no one to inherit. And you have to go kind of beyond the fact that you haven't heard of Lloyd George, or you haven't heard of the movie stars of the time they're talking about. And Michael is right that American audiences around the world enjoy the show because it's exotic, but actually we designed it to be a show to show that they're very like us, because they do have opinions about politicians, they do have their favourite movie stars, they like to go to the pictures and read magazines, and they all want to get a pension and they want to buy investment property and whatever it might be. They're very, very like us.
Yeah. That's true. That is very true. Right, we've got your favourite.
Well, it's not my favourite clip. It's the one that made me think this is something special.
Let's hope it's got these two in it.
It might not even be my clip at all. We'll find out.
Otherwise, it's going to be #orcs. Okay, let's take Such an amazing scene, because it's just one camera and it just goes. That's incredible.
It sets up the world. I mean, I think Gareth was there, so I saw it and I thought, this is stunning. You don't see this in television. This is a film shot. You set up the world in one shot. I asked Gareth, how long did it take to make it? Was it difficult?
Well, I mean, they're just terrifying those days, because you look, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and the camera has not turned over. And then suddenly you get all the work gets done in the last sort of 40 minutes of the day, and you do that about 12 times, and then one of them works. But that's all Brian Percival. Now you see, Julian's scripts they're brilliantly wordy and beautifully written. They're not particularly cinematic from the page. In fact, British scripts, I think our emphasis is more on the words. American scripts tend to be more cinematic. So it does fall to the directors because we did want it to be a television show, an episodic series, but we wanted that highest possible production value and for it to feel cinematic, and something that all takes place within 4 walls, or largely takes place within one building, wasn't going to make that very easy. So it really fell to directors like Brian Percival, who really created the look of the show. And what he does in that one scene is not even particularly scripted. He introduces us to all the main characters, certainly all the servants, all the main rooms that are going to be the characters in their own right in the show, and he does it economically in 1 minute.
I was just thinking, as we're looking there and seeing Daisy and Thomas, both of whom are wonderful characters, that you could say maybe there is a typical Downton character. They're characterised by being trapped in their circumstances. They're looking for fulfilment. They can only see the barriers between themselves and fulfilment, and they sort of don't realise, because you could say that of Edith as well, who's on the other side of the thing, they don't realise those barriers are going to come down. They can't see into the future, but we can see into the future. Yeah. So actually, Thomas is a gay man, and that seems to him to be something that's absolutely, he can never do anything about, but one day that'll be fine. And Daisy wants to get educated. One day she will be able to be. And I wonder whether there's, I've never thought of this before, but whether there's something there that very special that Julian has found, which is a sort of a hope into the future. You could absolutely say this of Carson and Mrs. Hughes, who at the beginning of Downton do not dream of moving into a cottage together and having another life. They believe this is their life forever. But it turns out it isn't. And I think that may be one of the reasons that it sort of gets us in quite a special way.
Is that big element of hope, which as human beings, that's what we live by, is the hope for something more, something better. Did you find that? I mean, it's interesting that Peter said he's not really thought about it in that way before. Had you guys thought about it in that way?
Well, there's two things. One, I think he placed it brilliantly in history. I mean, it starts with the Titanic going down, goes through the First World War, ends sort of mid-20s. We leave it in the mid-20s, it doesn't end. And I think so the changes in society drive the changes in the house. Daisy gets an education, and all sorts of things that happen because of where it's placed. But also jumping ahead to it's called Farewell to Downton, to the last series, when people, the people who love the show are potentially going to be quite upset. But I'm not going to give a spoiler, of course, but...
But you could.
No, but of course, no. Because we all
that.
work in the business, we know that is silly. But he sort of... these characters, we see them, we say goodbye to them, but it's not final. We see them setting off on different paths with sort of, not with hope in their hearts, really, but it's really satisfying. And 2 hankies Christmas night.
Two hankies you'll need, 2 hankies, yeah? Okay. Well, it's really nice that you sort of ended this section on that note, because we are going to premiere the trailer for season 6. Oh, you see, you're happy about that, aren't you? And that's exactly what we're going to show now. So it's never been seen before. So you're our very special guest to be able to view it with us this afternoon. So ladies and gentlemen, the premiere of the trailer of season 6 of Downton Abbey. Ear is actually in tears up there. Is anyone else feeling a little bit emotional? Anyone else feeling emotional? I think we should have this sponsored by Kleenex as well. It's all a little bit much.
When we did the episode, the Christmas Day episode, the end of season 3, the baby, we reviewed it with all the post-production guys, and our post-production supervisor, who is a woman, who was sitting, I couldn't see her, but she was, and I was really worried about the impact of that, Matthew's holding the baby and then he's dead. I was quite nervous about how that was going to go down. And so we ran the whole thing, it's a 2-hour thing we do on Christmas. We ran it, all the sound wasn't finished, and all the sound editors watched it to work out what was going to, work we were going to have to do. And it finished, the music went, and then the lights came up, and it was complete silence, and I couldn't see Jess, our post-production supervisor, and she was out of sight, and the room was just completely silent, and I was concerned because she loves the show and she loves the cat. I said, Jess, are you all right? And she just went, oh! And just burst into tears, and she went running out of the room. She couldn't, and it was about 15 minutes before we got to back, and I went, oh my god, Christmas night is going to be terrible.
Well, actually, so what I would quite like to know is, when I'm a bit tiddly this Christmas night, am I going to be emotional and heartbroken? Am I going to be clapping because it's like a celebration? Or are you going to break my heart this Christmas? Is basically what I want to know.
I'm sure it will. We haven't even got to the last episode in the editing, but I was in the cutting room yesterday, 4 middle-aged men, all trying not to make it look like we were crying in front of each other. And that wasn't even the last episode.
There's good crying and bad crying.
This is good. I've been in a few of those edits.
Peter, how did it feel for you watching that?
Well, the one thing I would say, by the way, is yes, of course, it's Farewell Downton is coming, but we've got an 8-part series and a Christmas special to come. If they were a standalone series in their own right, that's an awful lot of drama to come. There are new characters in the new series. Obviously, there's a familiar characters and new storylines for them. So let's not do the lap of honour. The final whistle hasn't gone and isn't going till Christmas. So lots to look forward to as well.
Absolutely. I mean, and for you guys, it is an end of an era of what I assume was a massive part of your life. How does it feel?
I have to confess, there were tears when it came to the end of I'm going to dog you in it, Jim. There was a sequence in the servants' hall, and quite several of us finished that day. and that was our last scene. And the tradition is that you say that was so and so's last scene, and the girls get a nice bouquet of flowers, thank you very much, and the boys get a nice bottle of plonk, and the crew clap you off the set, and it's all lovely. But of course this was the last ever scene, and so poor old Sophie had been practically crying through the takes with the camera on her back, fortunately, but Jim was being very stalwart, and he very kindly gave a speech on behalf of us all to say everything. And then halfway through, he sort of went, and his voice started, and he started going.
It's a job, you know, we did jobs, we leave jobs, we say goodbye to people, it's the rhythm of our lives. What's so special? Suddenly.
Well, that was the rest of us gone.
Gareth had said goodbye very nicely to us, and then I thought, well, I'll just say goodbye to the crew who worked so hard and, you know, and don't get the applause that they deserve all the time. And seeing their faces,
Sobbing, some of them.
sobbing, Lee the rigger, who carries heavy things, you know, tears for it just did me in, it was hopeless.
And that set the rest of us off.
Yeah, oh, we were puddles.
So, will you guys watch it on Christmas Day? I know you'll already know what happens, but will you be watching it?
I always watch it. I always watch it at the right time. Yeah, always, because we film in February and it's on in, you know, what we film in February is on in September. Because we film out of story order, you kind of lose the thread of the story because we don't see what happens upstairs in bedrooms, etc. You sort of forget the story when it comes out 6-8 months later. So, I mean,
nice.
we finish at our week together watching Downton Abbey. And, I mean, my daughter was 15 when it started. And it was lovely. We'd sit as a family and finish the week together with Downton, and it was a lovely end to the week. You know, we'd just tie up the week. I mean, like families all over the place.
Yeah.
Really enjoy it. And I don't think I've done that with anything else I've been in a way.
Yeah, I was
possibly.
going to ask, is it an unusual experience for you guys? Obviously, you know, you've had a long acting career, you've worked with loads of different teams and loads of different companies. Did this feel special? Working with this team?
Well, you didn't know it was at the beginning, but as it went on, and certainly with the response that it's had globally.
Sorry, I shouldn't be asking the questions. I'm just being honest. But it must be odd when you go away on holiday abroad and you go wherever you go, you know, Downton, because it's in almost every country in the civilized world, isn't it? Is that suddenly a very big moment in your life when you land, you know, in Italy or somewhere, and of course you're Carson and Mrs. Hughes.
So, on a
Not
charity.
you go on holiday together.
No.
On your.
We're here together.
Your agent, you've got the same agent. She just sent me a card saying she was on holiday in Botswana. Is that where she went? Botswana or somewhere. She was the biggest VIP on the entire trip because she's your agent. All of the other tourists just wanted to talk to her.
I did a charity bike ride in Cambodia, so there I was in my lycra and sweating and ankle watt, and a team of Chinese tourists pulled up in a coach and going, "Mr. Carson." You know, great fat sweaty lycra clan thing. But it's deeply recognised by Chileans. You know, it's very strange. But you said, was it different, this job?
Yeah.
And this was sort of more like a theatre job in a way, because there was such a big company with ages from, I think, Laura Carmichael, Lady Edith, one of her first jobs after drama school, really, through to Maggie Smith. So the whole range that you would get in a theatre company, and all the time sort of thing. So it was different in that respect. We formed, and because we filmed at Highclere Castle, so we'd stay down in hotels near there, so we could socialise more than we do in London. So I think we did become a lot closer than you might, in a regular job. Yeah.
Really lovely. Now, I'm going to ask Michael the final question, but after that point, if you've got questions, do feel free to stick your hand up, and we'll finish the session with questions from you guys. But finally, Michael, would you say that there's a blueprint that others should follow?
I actually wouldn't. I think the only thing I would say that we need to pay attention to is highly offered television. So there's a lot of talk about team writing in the US versus the British style of a single writer writing most of the episodes or all of the episodes. I think at the end of the day, what we all respond to, whether you're an actor, whether you're a director, a producer, or a commissioner, is something that is highly specific, that is unique, that we haven't seen before. I think trying to copy Downton for any of us would be foolish. I think there's lessons we can learn about something being uplifting or something about hope or something about that. But whether that will be in a country house is unlikely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this part of the session, before I throw to you guys, is done. Thank you. You've been wonderful. Wonderful panel. But now someone else gets to ask the questions. Who's going to dive in first? Oh, just over there. And if you could stand up so we can see you and give us your name and where it is that you're from. A bit like blind date.
I'll try not to include any innuendo. Tara Conlan from Media Guardian. I did have a tear in my eye at the trailer, I do confess. I just wanted two things. Gareth, is there anything that you, looking back, that you would change, that you would have done differently or not? And also, I guess the question for you and for Peter, just with the revival of Cold Feet potentially coming back, is this, and I know there's talk of the film, is this a real definite no to it ever coming back on TV, or never say never?
Start with you first, Gareth.
I was asked this the other day when we launched the new season, did I regret anything? And to be honest, I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect in every respect, but there isn't really anything I would think, I wish we'd cast a different actor for that role, or we hadn't tried that storyline. There isn't really anything that I wish we'd done differently. And I say it's not to say that it's 100% perfect and it couldn't have been better, but no, I wouldn't go back and change anything. And it definitely is the end of the television show, although I was answering that question as well somewhere else, and it suddenly occurred to me that just as, 30 years' time, somebody could...
George!
Well, that's the thing I most miss about the future, that we'll never see baby George as the Earl of Grantham. That could be a great spin-off. But I suppose there is nothing to stop a whole other generation of people, when we've all retired, going, I suppose it'll be whoever at that point owns NBC Universal will go, well, we own this property, we made it 40 years ago, and let's set it in another planet or something. Or you just never know, do you? It's certainly the end of...
You're not closed to the idea of it in saying...
No, it's over. The television show is finished. We'll finish at the end of the next season. But all I'm saying is we're of an age now where actually all these things do... Television's been around long enough that some things seem to get second. Now I know everyone's now going to write down that it could have a future lease of life. There is no plan to do that, but it's a weird thing that happens with some titles that are 40 years old. So who knows? But we won't be involved in it.
Okay, and the other question was to Michael and Peter.
I can't remember what the other question was.
That was in terms of would you consider bringing something like that back?
Oh, well, I used to say exactly the same as Gareth.
Yeah.
Okay. Who knows? Funny enough, when we commissioned Downton Abbey, there was another script circulating, which was made, which was a revival of Upstairs Downstairs.
Yes.
And in a sense, we sort of had a choice between the two. Now, the easier decision would have been to revive Upstairs Downstairs. It was, after all, an ITV show. And a revival guarantees you, of a very successful show, guarantees you a lot of publicity when you commission it, because people like to write about that, and brand familiarity and all that kind of stuff. And I think we did the right thing by saying, well, no, actually, but Downton Abbey's better, so let's just go with the new one. And I hope in the future people would make the same judgments. But that isn't an overall never revive. No, you could do prequels, sequels, and all. Everything. Nobody could tell. But we're all united at this point, and this is the end. This is the end of Downton, and that's not a provisional end. That is the end.
Okay. Another question from the floor. Gosh, you're awfully quiet today. Oh, yeah. Lady just over there. Don't forget to stand up and tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Hannah Flennis from The Telegraph. With apologies, I might have misunderstood you speaking earlier about when you were trying to introduce the concept and the detail to the American audiences. I just wondered, throughout all of the series, do you change the edits at all for international audiences, or do they go out identical to the ones we see here?
They're almost identical. There's a very, very slight difference in the running time by a minute, something like that, but they're almost identical, except for the slight irony that this is perhaps unique, that it's a commercial show in the UK with ad breaks, and it's on a non-commercial channel on PBS, so American audiences watch it ad-free. But there isn't really any difference. And that's to the point of the storytelling that Jim was saying. We've never changed anything. Cora was not there as a creation to make it more saleable in the US or anything like that at all. So no.
There was never a mention of the international market at all in any meeting we had during the initial development and commissioning of Downton. I'm absolutely sure of that.
I was told when I was trying to finance it that nobody in the United States would ever be interested in this idea. So.
Well, that person learnt a lesson. Do you have another question? Oh, right over there at the back. That gentleman just over there.
Torrin Douglas, journalist and neighbour of Phyllis Logan in Chiswick. It's going to be wonderful to see more of you in Chiswick. I know how much time it has taken over you in your life over the last few years. Indeed, we have other great Downton actors in Chiswick, actresses in particular, Lady Cora and Mrs. Patmore.
The Chiswick Tourist Board.
And I just wondered what it means for you now that you've got... Of course.
We all live there. We're in
So, centre of the media universe. What does it mean for you? What opportunities are you now getting as a result of you not having to spend the whole time doing Downton? And have people come to you and said, we'd love you to do this? And also for Jim as well, what opportunities, acting opportunities have you had?
Well, certainly, it like we mentioned earlier, it's not like any other job we've done before for a myriad of reasons. Its popularity, of course, worldwide being the main one. And certainly when I've gone over to the States, before I might have had trouble getting to meet certain people for, various things, but the minute you mention Downton Abbey, the doors thrown wide open and people welcome you with open arms, which is very nice. And long may that continue for, a few years to come. But, so certainly I could never have expected that if I hadn't been in such a high profile job around the world. And it's just been great to do, all the things that we do, the publicity, pre-publicity things around the world that we get a chance to do, and all our charity things that we do that normally people might not give to charities that we support, but because we organise certain big dues and we all pile into each other's, then people are happy to pitch up and throw in, and so that's been a great thing to do as well.
I think the opportunities are different for all of us. I think the youngsters have thrown themselves tooth and nail at myriad opportunities, and I'm at a different stage in my life, and the rhythm for the last 6 years has been mid-February till mid-August Downton, no time to do anything else because the schedule's sort of all involving. And then for the off period, I've been content to just sort of footle about really and enjoy myself. Silly old fool. But now, now it will be different. Next February, so the rhythm of life is different. So immediately, I'm using a different part of my brain. I'm doing a documentary for ITV, in fact, for the Perspective Strand on Lonnie Donegan, who, as some of you will know, is a great skiffle musician. I'll bore you about this later. But what Downton has done, it's allowed me to get in touch with, I'm interviewing Paul McCartney, Roger Daltrey, Ringo Starr for this documentary. It's allowed me to get in touch with them with the confidence that they'll probably listen to the plea, and the confidence that I can sit down with them and they'll have a vague idea who I am, and that I can talk to them on sort of less sort of fan-like terms than I might have done in the past, sort of thing.
Think about it, they've probably all got butlers.
I think actually Paul wanted me to. Anyway. But actually, I've got a project going with Paul McCartney. We're going to get together on an album called Downton Abbey Road. Don't write that down as not true.
I reckon, Jim, you should be doing stand-up, to be fair. You missed the trick there. You missed the trick. I think we've got time for one more question. Who's going to do our final question of the afternoon? Oh, well done. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Dick Footy from the BFI. You talked about how the tone of the piece can be deceptively dark in places, and I just wondered if you'd say something about the fantastic theme music, which really does set the mood and very uplifting, and how it came to be the theme music.
It's good, Dick, that you've raised the point of the music, and John Lunn, of course, is the composer. He's won numerous awards for this score. That theme tune is really a call to arms. I mean, it's globally recognised now. I think he's a genius composer. Why I can still afford to work with him and he's ever available to work with me, I have absolutely no idea, but thankfully he is. We worked in reverse. He scored the whole of the first episode, all of the incidental cues, and then we had to go at the theme music, and I think he had about 25 different goes, and we kept rejecting them, and they got better and better, and we kept saying, no, you haven't found it yet, you haven't found it, you haven't found it. And then he emailed us all around, where he first brought in that kind of percussive use of the piano as a kind of driving force to it, and we instantly know that he'd found it. And it's another massive character in the show, I think.
I mean, you asked earlier of Gareth, did he have any regrets about it? And I think quite rightly he said no, he couldn't think of any. But turning it on its head, I would put that in a slightly different way. At the point of commission of the series, what we had was a brilliant script. We were very confident it was a brilliant script. To go from there to this worldwide mega hit, you've got to do something which is very rare, which is you've got to make the right decisions on about 100 different things. So you've got to cast each part brilliantly. And I can't remember a part where I looked at and thought, didn't quite get the casting right on that part. Every part seems to have been inhabited by exactly the right actor. You've got to get the right composer. You've got to get the right location. I remember being told by Laura Mackie and Sally Haynes, great news, we've got Highclere Castle. To be honest, I never heard of it. It meant nothing to me. I sort of thought, well, what do we need?
The entail.
We need a country house. They all look a bit the same. But of course, it was absolutely right to go after this one because it's so iconic to look at. So all those things, all the craft areas that, as Jim was saying, aren't as spoken about as much. The costume, the lighting, the camera work, and so on and so forth. To have something that really has the impact of Downton, you've got to tick each box patiently, correctly on each occasion. And I think they did that on Downton Abbey, and that's a tremendous achievement for Gareth and Julian and all concerned. It doesn't happen as often as one would like.
But hats off finally on the John thing. It's the storytelling of the music, not just that there's a theme everyone recognises. That every character, that we've used this sort of leitmotif kind of device where Anna and Bates have a sad theme and a happy. We don't use the happy theme very much, but every character has a theme that Mary's had several love themes for depending who she's going out with at that particular time, and it's that sort of very, very subtle thing of the storytelling that John is doing in the score.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have time for. I would like to say a huge thank you to ITV and NBC Universal for literally busting a gut to make sure that we could have that trailer to show you guys today. So a huge massive thank you for that. And also just generally a thank you to our sponsor, NBC Universal, because we've had a bit of fun, I think, on stage here this afternoon. Thank you very much.